Hi, I am Joy Williams, and I am one of the co executive directors of Hope to Thrive. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the angry Black woman stereotype. Many people in the US Western culture depict Black women as angry. And I actually want to agree with that stereotype. And what we're going to do today is take a few minutes to kind of break that down. Then we're going to intersect that analysis with food insecurity and the creative solutions that Black women are actually aiding our culture and meeting the needs of marginalized populations. And without Black women, we cannot, as a culture, meet those needs. So take a journey with me. This is a journey because I recently, within the last past years, um, have been wrestling with this stereotype of the angry Black woman. I have been persistent in addressing unintentional races and classes acts that have been imposed on me through different experiences being in white spaces, going to a PWI, a predominantly white institution, and being the only Black person in the class. And in one episode or in one situation that was just really prominent is a situation where there is a class food potluck that we had, and each group was tasked with cooking for the whole class. And at the beginning, the professor asked about if there were any allergies or anything that would prevent people from just eating whatever the class prepared. And I have several different types of eating restrictions. And during that time, I was very, very sick. And my doctor, and I didn't want to take medicine and I didn't want to do surgery. And so my doctor had put me on a very strict diet. And I know it was very strict. So I offered to bring my own food, but the class was like, no, like this is a collective experience. We want to do this for everybody. So fast forward, when we had the potluck, they actually did not cook anything for me. And I got angry. Hence, part of my journey of analyzing this Black woman stereotype. Because as I began to talk with the professor about the dynamics that created that situation, because I felt really embarrassed, felt really ashamed. And it also hit a nerve because at that very moment, I was also food insecure anyway. And so to go to this class event hungry, expecting to partake with peers a meal that was going to be a portion of it cooked according to what I could eat, and to go there and to find that there was nothing prepared was not only disappointing and hurtful, but it was also, like I said, embarrassing to admit that, oh my God, I'm hungry, but it's not just this meal that I'm hungry, but I'm hungry in this season of my life. So as I began to talk with the professor through our different banter, he responded to me as, well, you don't want to be that angry Black woman, do you? Very interesting question. And I'm so glad he posed it in the way he did. And this professor, by the way, was a white male. And the reason why it was such an interesting question for me to then self reflect on is because I was that angry Black woman. It was not a stereotype. It was an actual and accurate description of how I felt right then in that moment. And as I began to start, like I wasn't reflecting or doing the analysis with him, I did it later on my own time. I began to start to think about what in our culture, what created the situation for me? Like if I were to take a step back from these students and why they chose not to actually end up preparing a meal, as they said they would several times over, because we had several different conversations. It was very interesting to kind of look at what actually is happening within our culture that creates people getting angry. And it just so happens that Black women have this stereotype more than any other excuse me, more than any other identity, such as a white woman or a white male or a black male or a Latino woman or a Latino male, although they all get angry, right? Like it's not just black women getting angry. But there is something very particular about our culture that produces a certain not only that stereotype, but produces a certain type of response to injustices. And that is what the journey that we're taking today through these slides that I kind of created on a whiteboard. And I just kind of threw it on there. So if you can't see it very clearly, please know that I will talk you through it as I go through this. But I also will hope at some point to be able to do a better version of this where it's a little bit more clearly depicted. This first slide, you will see that I have put live, work, and resources like all in one area. And you can also put play, you can also put worship, you can put all of these different things. So this is kind of like the big house, right? This is where we are, where people are living, they are going to their jobs, they might be in an apartment, they might be in a house, they might be living in a tent, they might be living with somebody else, and whatever resources that might include. So, is it a nice neighborhood? Is it a nice family? Like, what else is happening? And then we get to the next stage is like they're able to be as mobile as their transportation will allow them. So it's either their own vehicle or it's a bus, it's a friend, it's a parent, whatever, it's a bike, it's their feet, whatever is getting them from their living spaces to their workspaces to their play spaces. That tier right there is important. And that is why when cities decide to restructure their bus system or restructure the laws around driving or cars or prices in cars go up, when transportation is affected, it, excuse me, directly affects how people move in between these spaces of living, work, play, worship, and all of these other things. So we have these two categories so far. But let's move on to what else is happening within the individual and within the home. So we have access to food. Are they food insecure? Are they able to eat every meal? Are they able to eat healthy foods? What stores are nearby that they can buy or purchase these produce, these meats, or whatever it is that they're eating or whatever it is they're needing for their home, what stores are nearby? What is the cost of these items that they need? What is the quality of these items? What are the food nutrients, again, that are within the foods that are in the stores that is attached to their access? And what are the specific foods? Are there specific foods that are grown local? Are they shipped in? Do they have chemicals? Are they cultural? To where they may have access to something healthy, but they don't know what it is. So they're not going to cook it. It's not a part of their paradigm of understanding food and themselves and their own culture. So let me pause right here. And let's just say already people are making choices minute by minute, but certainly daily, of how they're moving between their living space, their working space, their play, their worship, how they're going to move. Let's say that they're on the public transportation system and the bus breaks down, and now they're going to be late for work, or now they're going to be late for worship. Or let's just say that person who gives them a ride can't do it today. They got into an argument, or let's say that person got sick. And so now we're looking at the emotions that are starting to build. And also let's look at the underlying emotion of anxiety. If you don't have stable housing, if you're living with someone or if you're not dependent on your own transportation or your transportation is a little bit iffy, there's like a small hum of anxiety of like, I don't know how today is going to work. I pray it's going to work well, but it might not. Or if you hear that little rattle in that car, oh no, I don't know what's happening. I want us to begin to see that the angry black woman stereotype that our culture says is so bad is actually a build up of different situations that are happening of injustices with no steady, stable, consistent solution to. So this is just the beginning. There is still more. So let's kind of break this down a little bit more when we go into the food security realm. So this next slide. We have food security. What is the housing security? What is the housing justice? What is the job security? What is the job justice? So before, we just talked about all of these choices that had to be made in between these different tiers of living, whether it's your home, whether it's your job, whether it's your worship, etc. Now we're taking a closer look to say, hey, how food insecure are you? Or how food secure are you? Do you have your own garden? Do you have a grocery store that you can get to? Right? We just talked about transportation. Is that grocery store, do they have fresh produce or is it canned or is it frozen? Again, that in itself is playing a role in the body and the mind because we know that nutrition has a direct effect on the brain and judgment and emotions. So if someone is not eating well, then already their system is not getting the best that it needs in order to function well. But then you also have the emotions, the anxiety, the stress. And let's not say that everyone is carrying that because some people, they're like, you know what? They don't got food. I'm cool. Like, I'm going to go somewhere else, another pantry or whatever. I'm not sure. But I don't want to say that everyone is experiencing this anxiety and stress because that may not be true. But I will say, that the fact that these choices are not readily available or that there's effort in getting them at every step of the way, that does take a toll on the body and on the mind. That's just the laws of energy. You have this much energy, and as you spend it, you have to replenish. But if what you replenish is not actual fuel at the highest level that the body needs in order to maintain a certain level of energy to function well, then you're always functioning at a suboptimal level. So, whether you're looking at it anxiety and stress, or you're looking at it just the mechanism of how the body functions, both there's a wear and tear. So we're having choices about food insecurity. And you see in this middle slide, the housing security, whether or not someone is paying for their own home. Do they own their home? Are they able to meet their mortgage? I'm sure you have heard everybody is one paycheck away from losing their home. Now, what happens when you have Black and Brown people who are historically disenfranchised on purpose? So we also have that layer of stress and trauma. So people are disenfranchised on purpose, and now they're living this experience that they have learned about of their ancestors, and now they're living it. And now it's like they had to live it. Now I have to live it. And my landlord is tripping, or I don't know what may be happening with the housing. It could be that they don't have any, that they're staying with somebody else and there is an agreement and they are trying to negotiate how long they can stay based on what they can give, which could be various, like either childcare, they could be giving money, they could be giving something else. And it's just difficult. It's a difficult place to be in, especially when we also bring in the element of justice, housing justice, where cities and towns are intentionally excluding people of color from being in apartments or in neighborhoods by raising rent prices, housing prices, mortgage prices, redistricting, making sure that public transportation is not there, really making it very, very difficult. Having HOA, homeowners association rules that kind of exclude people based on what kind of car you drive or how loud your music is, etc. So all of that is playing a role into the emotion and the emotional and the psychological well-being of anyone who is experiencing these injustices. And it just so happens that Black women have one of the poorest outcomes here in the US. And so if you look at food insecurity, you would see that Black women are one of the most affected. If you're looking at housing security, Black women are one of the most affected. Job security, Black women are some of the most affected populations. So hopefully, the summation of slide one and slide two is that this angry Black woman stereotype doesn't just come out of the blue. I hope you're beginning to see that it's a gradual accumulation of daily experiences and historical experiences that have fed into the psyche and the well being of a Black woman. And it would happen to anybody. Again, any other identifier or any other categorical group that we have structured here in the US, whether it's black women, I mean, whether it's white women, white men, black men, Latina, Latinx, everybody gets angry. So that's not like, ooh, what's that emotion? No, everybody gets angry. I just think it's another injustice to label Black women angry without also looking at the cultural contributions to what is happening on a daily level. So let's keep moving. So we talked about housing security, we talked about job security. Now let's take a look a little bit at what happens when our social programming, our nonprofits start to respond to all of these injustices. Okay. At the top of my list, I have treatment of those resources that they are exposed to. So now I'm sure you've heard the example of that black woman and child who was in that grocery line or at the social services and starts yelling because they're like, "Oh, we're closing our doors early." And she's like, "But I need my X, Y, and Z, whatever that is." We look at stories like that in isolation and we start to judge her. We start to say, "Why can't you be more calm? Why you're so loud? Like, why you looking the way you do? Like, why you have that kid?" And all of these unfair and hurtful judgments. And if you have considered all that I have shared so far, there are choices daily of what should I be negotiating of basic rights to basic living needs that many, many people are having to negotiate and decide on. And Black women, since we are some of the most affected populations in the job market and the housing market and all of these other categories that I've been talking about, when we go into a resource center looking for a resource and we are not treated with respect, of course it's going to bring agitation because it's one more choice we have to make to manage ourselves, and there's not enough time to bring healing. Like if I had to get there, let's just think about it. If I had to go to social services to get that EBT card, to get my food stamps, or to get my WIC, or to get whatever resource I needed, maybe it was they're going to help me with the resume, I don't know, whatever resource it is, I am home. But let's say my home is not my home. Maybe I have other people living in my home, or maybe I'm living in somebody else's home. So, stress one. Now I have to get there. So, I have to find some transportation, whether it's my car, the bus, somebody else's car. That's number two. But let's just say any of those things are not stable. There's another added layer of emotional stress that's coming on, and that hum is there, right? And let's also say that when we're driving, we have to go across town because now remember, cities are intentionally disenfranchising Black and Brown people. So now I'm getting to this resource. It's been, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes, maybe longer, depending on where you live. And now I get here, now I have to park. And now I might be a little bit overweight because of, I don't know, but let's just say this. Even if I'm not overweight, I'm not nutritionally at my optimum because of stores, because of food, because of income. So, and even if I had the best vitamins or the best access to the food, maybe I had that food pantry. We can say the body is already depleted from having to make all of these other decisions. So when I get in and someone disrespects me, and I haven't had time to regroup from all this other stuff that I just had to go through to get to this building, and I haven't had time to light my candles to say my prayer, and now we're spitting at each other and we're going at it. You can understand that. I think you can. I'm hoping that I'm not trying to defend people being angry. I'm not trying to defend that at all. I'm just trying to get you all to see that if you are using the Black woman stereotype, the angry Black woman stereotype as a part of discourse without looking at what's actually happening, we're doing an injustice. So let's go very quickly through this last list. So knowledge of resources. Do Black women know what resources are available? There are nonprofits popping up every day doing some type of good work. And there are organizations doing the same thing over and over for decades. And yet people are just now understanding or learning about Habitat for Humanity or this job resource or X, Y, and Z, this food resource. So let's also think about the belief about access to those resources. There are many women, there are many Black women who are like, yeah, I don't do handouts. Yeah, I'm not going to that pantry. Or yeah, I'm not doing EBT. I'm one of them. When I had to be on EBT, I was like, yeah, nah, that's all right. That's not for me. But then it was like, yeah, I need something. And I signed up. And it was very humbling, very humbling. But there are people who refuse to get a resource, and it is our right to refuse. It is our right. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. It's just a belief system. And that's what I want to point to. I'm not judging. I'm not saying that people should change it. I'm not judging that at all. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with getting resources. And I'm not saying yeah, it is what it is. Let me say that. It is what it is, period. But the belief system of how Black women believe of these resources, that's very important because that plays into their experience of the food or the low wealth experience or the poverty experience. And that's important. And then how much time is given to those resources. Let me move on to the next tier when we look at healthcare. So we're still in the same slide, but you see in the next column, it's healthcare. It's how are they being informed? What are the providers, the access? All of this again, like how is their health? Are they in and out of the hospital? Are they in and out of doctors' offices? Are they not going to the doctor and they should be? All of that again is building on the stress and the psyche of Black women. And then let's also look at the caregiving, the next column, the family. What is the family life? Are people in jail? Is someone in the hospital? Is there income? Is there foster care? Like all of that equals what you see health and well being. What is going on with this person? All of these things and more play a role into someone's health and well being. And we know this too because of the social determinants of health. That's a very common term when we think about the health of somebody. But we don't really think about the social determinants of health and how that determines someone's emotional health. And when we start to say these stereotypes of the angry Black woman, my friend, the angry Black woman was not born that way. She was built and designed to be that way by society and our culture. It is important that we understand that. The angry Black woman stereotype was not born, she was designed to be that way. And when we start to unpack these injustices and when we really start to bring healing and reconciliation, and not when I say reconciliation, I'm meaning specifically from reconciling the angry Black woman to the actual cultural events and the social events and the political events that are creating this person. When we start to reconcile that, then we can really start to bring solutions that really, really bring a difference. So, what creative solutions are Black women creating? Because Black women from this system, we are sick, we are bitter, we are poor, maybe poor character choices, but not everybody and not all the time. So let me not let me say that when we say the angry Black woman, these experiences, it produces death, and that was by design. Black women are dying all the time. Childbirth, having premature babies. It's like the list goes on and on. Diabetes, cancer, strokes, breast cancers, like it goes on and on and on. And yet, Black women are still rising up. They are learning how to heal themselves in very, very particular ways and very, very minute ways. Like, right? Like we wake up, we say a prayer. We're on the bus, we're saying a prayer. We might be holding pearls or crystals or lighting a candle or any of those things. And all of that brings so much healing, so much healing. And we're finding ways to build healing within our daily living experience. And that is the power that Black women are bringing to the space of, hey, let's do something different. We're creating different solutions. And when it comes to food insecurity, our neighborhoods and our communities cannot be fed without Black women. Within the Hope to Thrive food pantry, you see it the most prominent. It is the Black women who are coming, gathering food from pantries, gathering food from churches, gathering food from different social programs, fighting on the front lines, lobbying for bills and policies, and then taking it back to their families, to their families' families, to their neighbors' families, to their friends' kids' families, and that truly is how our fabric of the marginalized are being fed. And it's exciting. And Black women are not giving enough credit. So I want to say on this podcast right now, my gratitude to the many older Black women who are doing this work day in and day out and have done it for years, feeding our communities and feeding our world. Literally, the churches can't do the work. Our nonprofits can't do the work. Our policies are not doing the work. Our government officials are not doing the work. And I'm telling you that and when I say that they're not doing the work, it's even though they have done the best that they could, these entities, the churches, the nonprofits, the politicians, the policies, and let me tell you, yes, more can be done, and yes, more will be done, and more should be done. But even in the best case scenario, there are people that are still dying of hunger, still dying of and experiencing food insecurity. And it is women, particularly Black women, who are going to the source and then redistributing it. And and they're not being paid for it. They're doing it because they know that people need to eat. And that is the most beautiful thing about the creative solutions that Black women are doing. They're gathering, they're gathering and they're giving. And I say thank you. So I just wanted to break it down a little bit about the angry Black woman stereotype. And I hope to introduce you to some of Hope to Thrive's most prominent Black women who are doing this work. So stay tuned to our podcast to hear from some of our elders in the community. Thank you. I'm Joy Williams, co executive of Hope to Thrive, and you have been listening to our podcast.